Okay, so here's the thing. 5 critical choices. The first critical choice I made, I was 20 years old, and that choice was to pick up the phone when my sister called.
Yeah.
Now, that was a profound first choice. But I think people make first choices all the time, whether practical or profound. And what I want to know is, what is a first choice that when you reflect, you would say really impacted your journey to enduring success?
Yeah, and I thought long and hard about this, Trish, because I knew you were going to ask me. I was able to think about this really deeply. And I think one of the critical things that struck me, and I made a lot of choices early in life that were driven by my upbringing. I was brought up a Catholic. I'm now a Reformed Catholic, so I don't practice anymore. But it was a great value set to be brought up with. And a lot of the choices I made there were driven by the structure, the doctrine, and the expectation of the people around me. The first choice that I remember making, which was so crucial, that I made by myself with none of that influence sitting over the top of me, was as a young software developer working for a bank. And this choice was incredibly impactful for me, because I remember I was accountable as a very young person for delivering a particular outcome. It was a new implementation of a system, a financial system in this bank, and it was a really big deal. And I sort of was running point on it. And we had the implementation weekend, and this is back in the days where, you would stay up day and night for 3 days to get this done.
Camp there.
And we had a massive issue. And we'd gone too far in the process to roll it back and back out graciously and leave the system the way it was and try again. We had to go forward. And so the bank lost its financial systems for maybe half a day while we troubleshooted and got it all sorted out. And I remember this very clear choice I had, because when the CFO called me into her office and asked me what had happened, in that moment, I had a choice to make. There were all the things that I could have said about, the other people in the team who were supporting me, some of the things that the vendor had done that we'd, sort of not seen. And I just said at that moment, I thought, I'm going to take accountability for this. And I said, Mary, I just did not foresee that this issue could possibly happen. I completely missed it, and it's totally my fault. Now, when I took accountability for that failure, in that moment, she just looked at me and briefly just said, that's okay, Marty, you're doing a fantastic job. I just need to understand what the problem was. She says, you're doing really, really well. She became my biggest supporter. She became my biggest advocate. She became a sponsor for me inside that organization. And the reason for that was because I didn't try and blame someone else. I just decided I'm going to step into this. I'm just going to own this and take accountability for it, and I'll take whatever consequences come my way. That choice was so critical in forming everything I did from that day on as a leader, because I realized the outcome was so much better just to own it and take the hit up front and see what happened, and not be constantly fearful of whatever consequence might come down the road at me. And being able to release that fear was so liberating. And I was so lucky to learn this as a young guy, like I was in my mid-20s. And to learn that at that point was so incredibly powerful for me. It's governed a lot of things I've done since then.
When did you release your fear? Was it when you spoke it, or when you chose that that's what you were doing when you walked into your boss's or the CEO's office? When did you release the fear?
There's been a lot of glasses of red wine between then and now. So I don't know the exact moment. All I know is that by the time I walked out of that office, it was such an instantaneous choice.
You felt it. Yeah.
And it was so visceral. And when I walked out of that office, I felt like I was walking 2 feet off the ground.
It's amazing.
Because not only had I been able to stay true to myself and accept accountability for what I'd done in my part in this thing, which I was ultimately accountable for, but I was able to do so in a way that preserved my reputation, that demonstrated that we were doing everything we possibly could to rectify the issue, and to have the support of someone very, very senior. I just thought, how good is this? Like, why do people ever try and avoid the impact of these things when it's never as bad as it seems? And so the releasing of that fear in that moment was so incredibly important to me. Now, of course, I've had fear about a whole range of other things during my life, but that
of course, but that
professionally vital. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me for our Choose and Become interview series. You could find this episode and others at trishkendall.com. Just go to trishkendall.com/choose-become-interview-series. Or if you have a question or just want to leave a comment, email me, trish@trishkendall.com.